My sister said my college degree was useless and demanded my apartment because she had more real-world value. Then her online smear campaign backfired and she ended up exposed as a fraud. I'm genuinely confused about a situation with my sister Patricia 30F that's been escalating over the past few months. I need some perspective because I feel like I'm living in an alternate reality. For background, I grew up in a working-class family in Ohio. My parents, Robert and Linda, always emphasized education, but money was tight. Patricia dropped out of high school at 17 to work retail, saying college was a scam for suckers. I worked 3 jobs to put myself through state university, graduating with a computer science degree. After years of internships and entry-level positions, I finally landed a software engineering role at a tech company making decent money. 6 months ago, I moved into a nice 2-bedroom apartment downtown. It's nothing luxurious, just modern with good amenities and a home office space I need for remote work. The rent is about 30% of my income, which I budgeted carefully for. Patricia still lives in our childhood home with our parents, contributing minimal rent. The problem started when Patricia visited my apartment for the first time. She walked through each room with this strange expression, taking photos and muttering things like, "Must be nice," and some people get handed everything. When I showed her my home office, she laughed bitterly and said, "A whole room just for your computer. Real people need bedrooms for actual living." I tried explaining that I work from home 3 days a week and need a dedicated workspace, but she cut me off. "See, that's your problem, Michael. You think sitting at a computer all day is work? I've been in the real world since I was 17. I know what actual struggle looks like." The conversation deteriorated from there. She started listing all the ways my education made me soft and disconnected from reality. According to her, my degree is just a piece of paper that cost $40,000, while her street smarts and life experience are worth more than any classroom learning. "You wouldn't last a day in retail," she said. "Dealing with real people, real problems, not your made-up computer problems that some other college boy invented to keep you all employed." I was stunned. I reminded her about the years I worked in customer service to pay for school, the nights I studied until 3 a.m. while working full-time, the ramen dinners and shared rooms with 3 roommates, but she waved it all away. "That's not real struggle," she insisted. "Real struggle is not having daddy's college fund to fall back on." For the record, we didn't have college funds. I have $32,000 in student loans I'm still paying off. The visit ended with her declaring that it was criminal that I had a 2-bedroom apartment while she was stuck at home. "This is what's wrong with America," she said. "People who actually work get nothing, while computer boys who went to their little colleges get everything handed to them." I tried to point out that she could save money and get her own place. Maybe even go back for her GED, but she exploded. There it is. The college boy thinks everyone needs his precious education to deserve basic human dignity. She stormed out, and I thought that was the end of it. But over the next few weeks, she started a campaign of sending me articles about useless college degrees and street smarts versus book smarts. Every family dinner became a lecture about how formal education is a scam and real intelligence can't be taught in a classroom. My parents initially stayed neutral, but Patricia has been working on them. She tells them stories about her customers who have degrees but can't even figure out how to return an item without crying. She shows them TikToks about trade workers making more than engineers. She's convinced them that my job is temporary and fake, while her retail position is recession-proof and essential. Last week, she sent me a long text saying she's done research and determined that housing should be distributed based on real-world contribution, not paper achievements. She actually used the phrase "from each according to their ability" to "each according to their needs," which was ironic since she definitely didn't get that from her high school education. The breaking point came yesterday. She called to inform me that she's figured out the solution since my degree is useless in the real world and her practical experience is more valuable. I should switch apartments with her. She'll take my two-bedroom and I can move back home where college boys who live in Fantasyland belong. When I laughed thinking she was joking, she got deadly serious. I'm not kidding, Michael. It's time you learned that your little degree doesn't make you better than me. In the real world, the person who knows how to survive deserves the resources, not the person who memorized some textbooks. I'm at a loss. How do I even respond to this? She's created this entire narrative where education is worthless and somehow that means she deserves my apartment. I worked hard for everything I have, but she acts like my degree appeared out of thin air and magically generated money. Has anyone dealt with family members who use anti-education sentiment to justify wanting your stuff? How do you even have a rational conversation with someone who's decided that achievements they don't have must be worthless? Update 1. 2 weeks later. I can't believe I'm back here so soon, but the situation with Patricia has escalated to levels I couldn't have imagined. After my first post, many of you warned me that she was building up to something bigger. You were absolutely right. Following your advice, I had a calm conversation with Patricia trying to understand her perspective while firmly maintaining my boundaries. I invited her for coffee and attempted to validate her experiences while explaining that we both work hard in different ways. Big mistake. She arrived with a notebook, an actual notebook, where she'd been documenting what she calls evidence of academic privilege. She had screenshots of my LinkedIn highlighting every achievement. She'd calculated how many hours of retail work equal 1 semester of college. She'd even found statistics about college graduates' earnings versus high school dropouts, but somehow twisted them to support her argument that this proves the system is rigged for people like you. See, Michael, she said, spreading her papers across the cafe table like a prosecutor presenting evidence. This proves my point. The only reason you make more money is because society values fake computer work over real human interaction. But when the revolution comes, and it's coming, people are going to need customer service skills, not coding. I tried to redirect the conversation to our relationship, but she wasn't having it. She pulled out her phone and showed me photos she'd taken during her visit to my apartment, now annotated with notes. Master bedroom could fit a family of 3. Michael uses it alone. Second bedroom wasted on computers that could fit in a corner. Kitchen barely used because coding bros order takeout. Then she dropped the bombshell. She'd already talked to our parents about her plan. According to Patricia, she presented her case to Robert and Linda last Sunday while I was working on a project deadline, something she made sure to emphasize as proof that I choose computers over family. She told them that she's been studying social justice and learned that people with advanced degrees have been hoarding resources from hardworking Americans. I explained to them, she said proudly, that you're participating in systemic inequality by keeping a 2-bedroom apartment when you could easily live in a studio. Every night you sleep in that big apartment alone is a night that a real worker, someone who actually contributes to society, is stuck in their childhood bedroom. She'd apparently prepared a whole presentation for our parents, complete with printed articles about degree inflation and the college scam. She showed them stories about successful people without degrees and unsuccessful people with PhDs. The centerpiece was her calculation that her 10 years of retail experience should be equivalent to a master's degree in real-world economics. Mom cried, Patricia told me with satisfaction. She finally understood how the education system convinced her that one child was worth more than the other just because of a piece of paper. I was speechless. Our mother had worked double shifts to help me pay for textbooks. She'd been so proud at graduation, but according to Patricia, she now sees that as perpetuating educational discrimination. Patricia leaned forward, her voice taking on what she probably thought was a compassionate tone. It's not your fault, Michael. You were young and got sucked into the college industrial complex, but now you have a chance to make it right. Mom and Dad agree. It's time for equity in this family. I asked what equity meant in this context, though I was dreading the answer. Simple, she said. You had 4 years of college paid for by loans you'll eventually pay off. That's 4 years I was in the workforce contributing to society. So for the next 4 years, you should subsidize my housing to make up for that lost time. It's only fair. She'd done the math. If I paid for her to have an apartment equivalent to mine for 4 years, it would balance out the unfair advantage my education gave me. Alternatively, we could just switch apartments now, and she'd graciously consider us even though by her calculations I actually owed her more. Patricia, I said slowly, I worked during college. I paid for my education. I'm still paying for it and my job isn't fake. I build software that helps thousands of people. She laughed. Actually laughed. You push buttons to make imaginary things happen on screens. I help real humans solve real problems every single day. But sure, keep telling yourself that your software is important. When the power grid fails, we'll see who society really needs. She left me with an ultimatum. Agree to her equity plan by the end of the month, or she'd be forced to escalate her advocacy for fairness in the family. When I asked what that meant, she smiled and said, let's just say I've been connecting with others in my situation. There's a whole community of us who've been discriminated against for not buying into the education lie. We support each other. I went to my parents' house that evening. The conversation was surreal. My father, who'd always pushed education, now mumbled about different types of intelligence. My mother suggested that maybe I could help Patricia a little more since I'd been blessed with opportunities. She makes some good points, my mom said quietly. Not everyone can go to college. That doesn't make them less deserving of a nice home. I agreed with the principal, but pointed out that Patricia chose to drop out, chose not to get her GED, chose to turn down every opportunity for advancement at her job. My mother sighed and said I was being defensive because the truth hurts. I left, feeling like I'd entered an alternate dimension. Patricia has somehow convinced our parents that my working hard to get an education and build a career is equivalent to cheating the system, while her refusing every opportunity for growth is noble suffering. I'm genuinely concerned about what she meant by escalation. Should I be worried? And how do I deal with parents who've apparently been converted to Patricia's worldview, where education is oppression and achievement is theft? Update 2. 1 month later, I'm back with what might be the most bizarre update yet. Patricia's escalation has taken a form I never could have predicted, and I'm oscillating between disbelief and genuine concern for her mental state. After my last post, I took your advice and installed security cameras with my landlord's permission, changed my locks, and made sure building management knew Patricia wasn't authorized to access my apartment. I also had one more attempt at a rational conversation with my parents, but they seemed fully indoctrinated into Patricia's narrative. My dad actually said, maybe we pushed college too hard. Patricia is showing us there are other ways to be smart. For 2 weeks, things were relatively quiet. Patricia sent daily articles about academic elitism and success stories of dropouts, but I ignored them. Then last Tuesday, everything exploded. I came home from work to find Patricia in my building's lobby with 5 other people. She introduced them as her Street Smart Collective, apparently the community she'd mentioned. There was Jennifer 26F, who dropped out of community college and believes that certificates are mental slavery. Thomas 31M, who was expelled from high school for refusing to conform to educational authoritarianism. Michelle 29F, who claimed she was degree shamed out of 3 different jobs. And a couple, David and Nancy, both 32, who run a YouTube channel about surviving academic discrimination. Patricia announced they were here for a housing assessment to document inequality. Before I could react, she pulled out an official-looking clipboard and started reading from it. Michael Thompson, you are being formally assessed for educational privilege and resource hoarding. The Street Smart Collective has the right to evaluate whether your housing situation represents fair distribution of resources based on real-world contribution versus paper credentials. I laughed, thinking this had to be a joke. It wasn't. Thomas stepped forward with a measuring tape, an actual measuring tape, and announced he would be documenting the excess space in my apartment. Michelle had a camera and said she needed to record evidence of academic lifestyle inflation. David and Nancy started interviewing my neighbors, asking if they knew about the education fraud happening in Unit 4B. I told them to leave immediately or I'd call the police. Patricia's face went dark. There it is, she announced triumphantly. The college boy calls the police on working people. This is exactly what we're talking about. He's so threatened by real-world accountability that he hides behind systems designed to protect the educated elite. Jennifer started live streaming, narrating to her phone. We're here at ground zero of academic privilege, where a paper pusher hoards resources while real workers struggle. And now he's threatening us with state violence for simply asking questions. I went into my apartment and locked the door, but they stayed in the hallway for another hour. Through the door, I could hear them measuring the hallway, calculating square footage, and discussing how many real workers could fit in the wasted space. Patricia kept saying things like, his office could be someone's entire home, and square footage should be distributed by social value, not salary. The building security finally made them leave, but not before Patricia shouted, "This isn't over. Michael, the revolution is coming, and it starts with housing justice." I thought that was the peak of insanity. I was wrong. 3 days later, I woke up to 47 messages. Patricia had created a Facebook page called Housing Justice Street Smarts versus Book Smarts, with my apartment complex as the profile picture. She'd posted the documentation from their visit, including photos taken through my windows. Apparently, Jennifer had gone around the building exterior floor plan she'd somehow obtained, and a detailed breakdown of how my apartment should be redistributed. But the real shock was the manifesto. Patricia had written a 30,000-word essay about how I was the perfect example of academic colonization of living spaces. Choice excerpts. My brother Michael represents everything wrong with our society. While millions of Americans work real jobs serving real people, he sits in his ivory tower of JavaScript and Java, creating nothing of value while hoarding space that could shelter entire families. He claims he worked hard for his degree, but what is 4 years of reading books compared to 13 years of serving humanity? Every customer I've helped, every crisis I've resolved, every real human connection I've made is worth more than his entire computer science curriculum. The time has come to say enough. No more should paper credentials determine who deserves comfort. No more should coding be valued over caring. We demand housing justice now. She tagged our entire extended family, my employer, and somehow found and tagged several of my colleagues. The post had been shared 847 times, mostly by members of various anti-groups I didn't know existed. The comments were a mix of supportive preach. My sister has 2 degrees and acts like she's better than me. Confused, wait, so you want his apartment for free, and critical. This sounds like jealousy with extra steps. But Patricia responded to each one, building her case that she was leading a movement for real workers. My mom called crying, not because she was horrified by Patricia's behavior, but because she was proud of Patricia for standing up for herself. My dad texted asking if I'd consider just letting her stay in your spare room to keep the peace. Then came the real kicker. Yesterday, Patricia sent a group text including me, our parents, and several aunts and uncles. She announced that she'd been in touch with a housing justice lawyer who after some Googling appears to be a paralegal who was disbarred for practicing without a license, who told her about adverse possession laws. If Michael continues to refuse fair redistribution, she wrote, "We have legal options." Averse possession allows people who actually use and need property to claim it from absent owners. Since Michael works from home and barely uses half his apartment, we could make a strong case. She actually believes she can legally take my apartment through some twisted interpretation of squatters' rights because I don't use every room every hour of every day. My Uncle Charles, bless him, was the first family member to push back. "Patricia, this is insane. You can't just take someone's apartment because you don't like that they went to college." Patricia's response, "Uncle Charles, with respect, your generation doesn't understand systemic educational violence. This isn't about not liking college. This is about survival in a system rigged against real workers." As of now, the Facebook page has grown to 1,200 members. Patricia posts daily updates about the cause, sharing photos of studio apartments with captions like, "This is where a shift manager lives," next to stock photos of nice apartments with "This is where a coder lives. See the injustice." She's announced plans for a march for housing justice outside my building next weekend. The Facebook event already has 73 people marked as attending, though I'm hoping most are just there for the drama. I've consulted with an actual lawyer who assured me that Patricia has absolutely no legal claim to my apartment and that her understanding of adverse possession is completely wrong. He suggested a cease and desist letter, which I'm considering. The most frustrating part, I've started getting messages from random people sharing their own stories of academic siblings who hoard resources. Patricia has somehow tapped into a vein of resentment I didn't know existed. One message said, "Your sister is brave for exposing you." My brother has a law degree and owns a 3-bedroom house. The revolution is coming. I'm at a complete loss. How did we get from "I don't think college is for me" to "I deserve your apartment because you went to college"? And how is this movement growing? Update 3, 2 months later. This will likely be my final update because the situation has reached a resolution, though not in any way I could have predicted. The past 2 months have been a masterclass in how delusion and entitlement can spiral into complete self-destruction. After my last post, Patricia's movement continued to grow. The March for Housing Justice actually happened, with about 40 people showing up to march around my building with signs like, "Degrees don't deserve bedrooms in code. This housing equals human right." Patricia gave a speech about how I was patient zero in the epidemic of academic housing hoarding. Building management was not amused. They sent me security footage of Patricia trying to convince the maintenance staff to let her in because the apartment morally belongs to me. She'd also been calling the leasing office pretending to be me, trying to add herself to the lease. When that didn't work, she tried posing as my social worker, claiming I needed supervised housing due to computer addiction. The Facebook group grew to 3,000 members, and Patricia started selling street smart books, smart merchandise. She quit her retail job to become a full-time housing justice advocate, which apparently meant making TikToks about me. She'd stand outside my building filming herself saying things like, "Day 47 of asking my brother to stop hoarding housing." Still, no response. The academic elite stay silent while we suffer. Then things got legally interesting. Remember the housing justice lawyer Patricia mentioned? Turns out he convinced her to file an actual lawsuit, not for adverse possession. Even he wasn't that delusional, but for emotional damages caused by educational discrimination and housing inequality within a family unit. I was served papers at work. The lawsuit sought $200,000 in damages and equitable redistribution of housing assets. It claimed I had caused Patricia severe emotional distress by flaunting academic privilege and created a hostile family environment through educational superiority. My lawyer literally laughed when he read it. The suit was so badly written, it cited Wikipedia articles and included YouTube comments as evidence. One piece of evidence was a photo of my diploma with a red circle around it labeled Exhibit A, Weapon of Oppression. But here's where Patricia made her fatal mistake. In building her case, she'd submitted financial documents to prove she deserved housing assistance. These documents revealed some interesting facts. One, Patricia hadn't actually been paying rent to our parents. She'd been telling them she was taking money from them for rent, then keeping it. Two, she'd been earning significantly more than she claimed through her merchandise sales, none of which she'd reported on taxes. Three, she'd received an inheritance from our grandmother specifically earmarked for education, which she'd spent on a failed MLM scheme 3 years ago. My parents were devastated. While they'd been supporting her housing justice campaign, she'd been scamming them for over $15,000 in fake rent payments. The discovery came when my lawyer subpoenaed financial records, and suddenly, Patricia's working-class hero struggling to survive narrative fell apart. But Patricia doubled down. She went live on Facebook